She is a Kent longtime resident and our working mayor that is doing great work for our businesses here in the community. So welcome, Dana Mayor Ryan.
You know what, I just answered today. Dana Mayor Ralph works perfectly fine. Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to start with saying thank you for turning out today. Right, there is a lot of panic going on and things happening, and we'll save that all for the end of the conversation. But grateful for you all being here today. At the City of Kent, we are doing everything we can to make sure that people understand the situation at hand. I love the alternative handshakes because it's been the most awkward thing any of us have done for the last 2 days, right? Do I hug you? Do I touch you? Do I fist bump, elbow bump? All of those things. So I think it's fun to be able to talk about some of the different things. One of the folks in economic community development said she's doing an air shake. So it's like stand back far enough that they can't touch your hand but act like you're shaking. I thought that's also a good one to add in there. I'm going to be completely honest with you up front. We have known this conversation was coming for a while, but the week sort of blew up. So no fancy PowerPoint. I am going to go through some big economic development business wins that we've had over the last year, talk a little bit about our response to COVID-19, and then just open it up for questions. Is that good with everybody? We're all okay with that? I want to brag a little bit about our Community and Economic Development Department. You guys raise your hand. Sorry, Michelle, right as soon as you took a bite. We're getting really good at that here in Kent. In the past year, we've added 2,300 jobs to our economy. And one of the things I am committed to is making sure that in Kent, we've got good paying jobs for any one of our residents that want it. And we are well on our way. We are going to continue to drive that idea that people should be able to live and work in the same place. We shouldn't have to travel an hour to get somewhere else for a good paying job. And we've been delivering on that promise by adding jobs over and over again. In response to those large jobs, that number of jobs we're bringing, we've also been working on housing stock. So you may have seen a couple of the new developments going in down by the golf course. We've got Ethos there, and then Midtown, which is the 64th and Meeker project. Those are both high-end or higher-end market rate developments. And I get a lot of questions from people like, why aren't you building more affordable housing? The reality of Kent's housing stock is we've got a ton of housing in the middle, right? From that 30 to 80 or 100%, more than we actually have residents. We don't have housing stock on the very, very low end, which is common to nearly all communities, and we don't have housing stock on the upper end. So think about being a new employee to one of our aerospace technology companies, Blue Origin, any of those companies. You've got a good salary and you need a place to live that is, you know, in the same realm as that salary. We don't have that housing stock here in Kent. Spent the entire day Saturday with the mayor of Issaquah, Mary Lou Pauley. We were in Olympia talking about streamlined sales tax. When I say the whole day, I mean we got there at 9:30, didn't leave till 4:30. We were number 51 out of 52 on the agenda for the committee. But it's important to our community. So as I was talking to Mayor Pauley, she said, we just don't need one more $1 million house in Issaquah. I'm like, I'll take them, send them our way, right? That's where our gaps are. So we really are focusing on attracting housing in the ranges where we have the gaps, because that also takes pressure off of the housing in other income levels, right? If you're living in this community and you can afford this end, but that stock's not available, then you're displacing somebody that needs to be in a different bracket. And so it really is about making sure that housing is affordable, but that housing is affordable to all areas of the income level in our community. So we've added 857 units and 1,200 square feet of new retail space in those developments that are happening. And we're going to continue to work on bringing that quality development to the city of Kent. The Top Foods property, that's something that somebody asks about all the time. That has been purchased, so we are hopeful that we're going to get some new development there. That's one of the questions we get asked a long time. What are you going to do with the Top Foods? Well, the city doesn't own the Top Foods, so it makes it really hard to come in and build something there. Bill has done a ton of outreach on that property to bring development, so we are hopeful that we're going to see something new out there. Can also report to you on the Kmart property down in the valley. Same situation, it's privately owned. There were some hurdles with that property as Kmart and Sears went through a bankruptcy process and long-term leases and those kind of things. We were over that hurdle. And I can tell you that there is interest on that property. I'm not able to share with you exactly what it is, but there is interest. So we are hopeful that within the next few months we'll be able to talk about that publicly as well. The Boeing property down at the Boeing Space Center, you know, that big place, I don't know about anybody else in the room, the place that your parents took you to learn how to drive. That's where I started, in that giant parking lot before it was mostly fenced off. Boeing has let loose a big section of that property, and it is under contract for a development there as well. So we're pretty excited about something new coming to a section of that area. In that same vein, thinking of the Valley, Tuesday, our city council passed some, I think it's historic is a pretty good word for it, zoning updates to our Valley. You've all heard us talk about streamlined sales tax when the state took our sales tax money and took it from origin-based to destination-based, right? So when you think about that, warehousing was very lucrative because everything that left a Kent warehouse, we got that sales tax for. Well, 2008 came along, and the state being proactive, we want to be one of the first, we're going to change it to destination-based so everybody sort of gets their fair share. Well, Vancouver, Washington won in that. Bellevue picked up about $5 million. Any guesses on what Kent, in today's dollars, lost because of that change? Garvin's been listening. It's roughly $14 million in today's money that just got plucked out of our economy with no way of bringing that back, right? Because the warehouses, they house things for the entire region, the entire state, and those products go someplace else. So now when somebody in Ording buys something in Kent, we get the truck traffic, we get the building, we get all of those things, they get the sales tax. So we knew it was time for us to do something different and look at a way to diversify the Valley. Kind of the way I think about it is, we all have heard that saying about putting all your eggs in one basket. That's kind of what Kent did starting in the 60s and 70s, right? We were a warehousing and logistics community because it made sense. Problem with that is when someone else changes the rules on you, which is what the legislature did, now we've got nothing to fall back on, right? So, I mean, there is revenue that comes in, do not get me wrong. It's just, we've lost a ton. So the Rally the Valley initiative, council authorized that to be put in place at the beginning of last year, almost exactly a year ago. And it was an exercise to look at how can we diversify the economy of the Valley? How can we add in businesses that generate different types of revenue so that we're not dependent on just one thing? And how do we make the Industrial Valley a place where people want to be, right? Because things are changing as we bring in different businesses. It's not just about trucks anymore. It's how do I walk to get in between buildings for my employer? How do I walk to lunch? Where do I go to lunch? Can I drop off my dry cleaning? Is there a daycare in the area? All of those kind of things. So we implemented an interim zoning a year ago, got some pushback. People kind of said, wait a second, what's Kent doing? Are we getting rid of the warehouses? We did our best to reassure everybody that we know who we are at our core, right? The warehouses aren't going away. We just need it to be different. We need it to have some opportunity for things. People want to go out and recreate on their lunch hour. They want to go out and get on a trail or go down and see the river. How do we make access for that? How do we make the Valley a place that an employer can say, you should come work for me because this is a great place to be? So I really do believe that we've accomplished that goal in our Rally the Valley sub-area plan. Council passed it on Tuesday, and I am so proud of them for embracing that vision. Our Economic and Community Development Department worked like crazy to get this done because we wanted to lessen the impacts on property owners. That was the other piece, right? We need to be partners. But what we came out with is a plan that will make our Valley, over time, right? Development doesn't happen tomorrow, but it will make our Valley a dynamic, innovative, new type of neighborhood, right? I use that word not because there's going to be a bunch of housing, but it's an ecosystem. It's a place that people come and hang out, right? Your neighborhood is where you're at. And for most people, they spend most of their time at work. So we're really excited about the outcomes and the things we're going to see as development moves forward in the Valley with Rally the Valley. Let's see here. I want to talk a little bit about partnerships and how we at the city can get things done, and that's with partnerships, right? Nobody can do anything on our own. And I am extremely excited about how our partnership with the chamber is growing and changing and becoming positive. Zenobia and I talk on a regular basis, and it's about figuring out how does the chamber support you as a business, and how does the city support you? Business is important to me. I understand that it is how we get everything else done in the city. And so I just want to reiterate, while I'm standing here in front of you, my commitment to business, both big and small. It's important, and we have to be in this together, and we have to be on the same page. So an example of that, there was some legislation introduced in Olympia. It started out as 2907, changed to 2948. You guys heard of that head tax bill that all of a sudden came out of nowhere? Yeah. Right, it's a little bit scary because it came out of nowhere. What we were told as cities is that some big businesses, the Microsoft-sized businesses, got together with local leaders. And what they meant by local leaders were the King County Executive and the Seattle Mayor. They didn't mean the 38 other cities that would potentially be impacted by that tax. We immediately raised red flags. We were very concerned. We did not know how that proposed tax, and it's a tax that would be used to address homelessness and housing in the region. We didn't know what the impacts were going to be on Kent businesses. I don't know how many employers pay their employees $150,000 or more. It had a small business exemption unless you're a sole proprietor or a small group, right? If half of your employees make $150,000, you were not exempt in that initial draft. So I got really concerned. I reached out to Zenobia, and I want to applaud the chamber for taking swift action to oppose that bill. That kind of thing matters, right? It gives us a thing to hold up and say, wait a second, we don't know that this is going to be a good thing for our community. I went down and testified along with the mayor of Auburn on that bill, and it was really around the fact that there had been no communication. We can't get behind or even oppose something that we don't understand. So we had asked the legislature for more time. We weren't necessarily ready to do that, but it's my understanding at this point that bill is very close to being dead in the legislature, and we will not see it going forward. Again, I think that it would have, this will be, you'll hear a theme when we start talking about the coronavirus. Communication is the key to everything in success, right? It's communication between the city and businesses, communication between the chamber and the city, communication between us and our legislators. It matters, and when you start trying to do things without talking to people, it doesn't ever end well. It's not a good place to be. We embrace that in Rally the Valley, set up a panel of experts because we wanted to hear from people impacted by those possible changes. And what I can tell you is that where we thought we were starting or where we were going to end up as a city changed drastically based on the input of the business community. And we wouldn't have known that without that process. So just want to reaffirm that we have to communicate, we have to be partners, and we have to work together. I am committed to you to always being open and transparent. If there is a question that you have, if there's something that's impacting you, every decision has unintended consequences, right? We can roundtable and brainstorm all day long, but there's going to be something that whatever table we've convened doesn't always think of downstream. And my ask for you is that you help us understand what those things are. As a business leader, if you see something coming, give me a call, send me an email, say, hey, did you think about this? And my hope is I'm going to be able to say yes, and this is the thought process. But also, if I haven't, then I'm going to say, let's sit down and talk about it. So that's really what I want to make sure that you all know. My door is open. Oh.
That wasn't me. I don't know what that was. But I was also saying tonight.
Tonight, yes, thank you. So part of our desire for transparency is open communication. Tonight at Blue Origin, in their brand new building, their tensile membrane structure, or I think I'm being recorded, I'm not gonna say this too loud, but the Tent in Kent, right? That amazing blue building. They have opened their doors for us to host the State of the City address. So I would love anyone that's interested to come down. It is a much more cohesive speech, right? I'm not going to be all over the board. I have notes for that. It will be, I promise you. but would love to come out. And that's another way that we're working to make sure we're transparent. We're doing coffee and conversations, both myself and the chief, getting out into the community, hosting neighborhood events, all of those kind of things. I would love to be able to touch base with you all regularly on issues in the business community. So that is my offer to you. With that, I'm going to end sort of the more formal thing, and let's talk about, I'm guessing people have questions maybe about what's been going on in Kent in the last 2 days. Anybody interested in what's happened there? Okay, I'm going to put my notes down.
Put your gloves on.
I can put my gloves on, there you go. I'll just, here. This is my motto, just in case you want to know, right? This is I'm going to bring it into every meeting I go to and set it down just to put people on notice. We're not messing with Kent. That is what I do. And I drink that water, so if I have a cough, people don't think I have the COVID virus. So that's the other part. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of run down for you quickly what has happened in the last couple of days and where we are at. So we are all aware of this coronavirus outbreak that has begun here in the state of Washington, epicenter at the Life Care Center in Kirkland. We know that that's kind of where it has started. Monday afternoon, midday, our office got a phone call with a tip from a concerned person that had some information and said, hey, I don't know if you heard the executive speech this morning. They're buying a hotel to use as a quarantine facility for the coronavirus. Okay. The only facility they're looking at is one in Kent. That was the first notification the city of Kent had about that plan. I texted the executive and asked him if he had time for a call, and around 4 o'clock on Monday afternoon, he called me back and I said, Mr. Executive, I need to confirm a rumor. And he said, yes, that's true. We're looking at the Econo Lodge in Kent, so right there off of Central when you get off of 167. And then he did offer his staff for a meeting the next day to answer our questions. Fast forward to Tuesday, we had a meeting set up for 3 o'clock. And I got a call early in the morning that said, oh, by the way, we're going to tell King County Council this information, so it's going to go public at 1. Okay, maybe we should have our meeting at 10:30. So convened a group in my office, the police chief, the fire chief, our community and economic development department regarding permitting, city attorney, chief administrative officer, myself, got on the phone with public health and King County staff, and we had a whole list of questions about what a quarantine facility would look like in a hotel in Kent. The unfortunate thing was there wasn't a lot of answers to our questions. We were frustrated, to say the very least, about the plan or apparent lack of plan or ability to answer the questions that we had. So we did ask, will you give us a little bit more time so we can get through some of these answers before the whole thing goes public? That worked until about noon yesterday. And then we were getting calls from the media saying, we know it's Kent, what are you doing about it? That's a problem. We had another meeting with King County, another phone meeting with King County earlier that morning, still didn't have a ton of answers. What we know today is that they have purchased that hotel, the Econo Lodge right there north of Bow and Scarf, and the plan is there's just under 90 rooms in it, that it will be a voluntary quarantine facility for people that have been exposed to the virus or are symptomatic but not in need of hospitalization, and that have no other place to quarantine. So when we think about that, we think about that as our homeless population. Some of the examples the executive's office gave were also possibly college students, like if they're in a dorm situation. What we also learned in that first phone call is that they had been looking at this property for several months prior, which raised even bigger concerns for me than the emergency response. Right? I absolutely am going to give anyone grace in the middle of an emergency. You do what you have to do to take care of people, and Kent is 100% supportive of making sure we are taking care of people, and that means everyone, and that we're doing our part. We are the 3rd largest city in King County. What is concerning to me is there's a larger plan here that we have yet to been able to completely pin down. So what we learned on that call is that public health had been looking at this for some time for a permanent quarantine facility for other contagious diseases. Hepatitis A, TB, and measles were the ones that were mentioned. So where my concern, what I tried to get across to folks yesterday in that press conference is, I get that we all have to step up and do our part in the middle of a crisis. But long-term, we need to be involved in the conversation. That is a gateway to our city. We have just made major investments in that area. That new bridge that goes over 167. We have money in our budget this year to create a gateway there, right? To make it one of the places when you land in Kent that you can be proud of and know that you're in a place that cares about its community. We have significant businesses on that route. Long-time Kent family-owned businesses, right? And perceived or real, a quarantine facility makes people nervous, right? I am going to tell you, I have no reason to believe that if you go over and try and buy a fruit tree or a car, you're going to get the coronavirus. I want to make that very, very clear. But the perception is sometimes bigger than the reality. So 2 prongs. What are we doing now? What are we doing long term? In the now, we have some significant safety concerns because it's a voluntary facility. So there's no law that requires people that are there to stay there.
Yeah.
They will be transported by public health via ambulance to that location and asked to please stay in their room. It has worked for them so we asked, how does this work? How does it work for other, they said, oh, we've had really good success with people self-quarantining. The next question was, okay, show us where there's a facility like this that exists. There's not one. This is the guinea pig facility. This is the let's try it and see how it works facility. So we have another call with them tomorrow. We did get them to commit to fencing. And I also asked that it be aesthetically pleasing because I don't need a, chain link barbed wire fence at my gateway. There will be public health's unarmed security on site, but we haven't been able to pin down what exactly that means. I am concerned about my first responders responding, right? So something goes sideways, something happens. Police now, as they show up, they're the first responder. What kind of equipment do they need? How do they respond? All of those things, and what does that cost the city? So we've asked to explore mitigation for things like that. What happens if there's an exposure to an officer or a firefighter and they have to be quarantined, like what we've seen in Kirkland? You all know we are understaffed in our police department. If anybody did not know that and has not heard me say that, let's meet afterwards. I'd love to tell you the story. The chief would love to tell you that story too. So you take an understaffed police department and pull multiple officers out of that, then what happens, right? Then that really does put the rest of the community at risk. So we are hopeful. I emailed the executive's office last night letting them know I want to be a partner. I have asked to be a partner repeatedly over multiple situations. We will continue to want to partner, but in order to do that, we have to be invited to the table. That's my ask. My commitment to you, as I learn things, I will keep the public informed. As we move through this process, I will be open and transparent and let you know what we learn. And I will let you know what you do not need to be afraid of and what you do need to be afraid of. I'm going to be honest with you. My job is to make sure that people understand what's happening, and also I need to be that voice of calm when there's all of that hysteria going on, and that's my commitment to you. We have heard that they're planning on opening the facility in the next 9 to 10 days, so I guess we're the 8 to 9 days. We have a call again tomorrow. There's been no permitting. There's been nothing that has occurred there, so we're a little bit concerned. I also want to reinforce the point, this is not Kent saying not in my backyard. Okay? I've gotten a lot of pushback from the press conference yesterday. You don't care about anybody, you just don't want it here, you want it someplace else. I will tell you, had King County come to us and said we need to do some sort of temporary emergency situation, I can already think of several properties that we could have helped them out with that would have had less impact to the community and served the same purpose, but we weren't afforded that opportunity. That's frustrating to me, right? We are the 3rd largest city in the county. We deserve respect. We deserve to be communicated with, and I will continue to advocate for that. Yes?
How do people with a shot eat?
Say that again?
shopping and eating, how they be fed?
Oh, good, very good question. We asked that. So those hotel rooms are small and they're old and they do not have kitchens in them. So one of the questions we had is, how are you gonna feed people? They said they would have grocery service. And my next question was, how do you have grocery service when there's no place to cook anything, keep it cold, or heat it up? That is on our list of questions to hopefully have answered tomorrow. Somewhat sarcastically, I said, is it just going to be a line of Uber Eats coming and going? And I mean, what does that look like, right? Because you can't cook. So we don't know. They have just said that they would provide for the necessities of the people in the rooms in an effort to help them stay quarantined. But that is one of the questions that I don't believe we've gotten a satisfactory answer to. So at this point, I want to go ahead and just open it up for questions. I'm guessing people have things on their mind. I would love to just turn this into a conversation. Julie.
So we are the city of Kent. And are they bullying us into this at this point? And do we have any recourse?
Yes, I do feel bullied. I think we all should. So the thing that allows this to happen as quickly as it did is that declaration of an emergency, right? It gives King County and the state powers that they don't normally have, and powers to go around process. I said it yesterday, so I'll take the heat for it, right? I have picked a fight. My husband last night said it feels a little bit like David and Goliath, but give me my slingshot, we're here.
Well, we know who won that battle.
Right? Oh, I didn't think about that. That makes me feel so much better. Yeah, it's my job to defend Kent, right? It's my job to take care of this place that we all call home. We will continue to fight. I don't believe, and I've got a room full of lawyers and planners and code people looking at what we do. How do we figure this out? Long term, I have already made it very, very clear that we're not okay with this being a permanent facility. I have more faith on that front than I do on the other side, but not going to take it lying down.
What does our King County representative said about this?
So I've been in conversation with several King County council members. They are very supportive of us and have committed to walk side by side as we go through the long-term process. They are also somewhat in a disadvantaged position because of the state of emergency. So I don't know if you saw it in the news, a good explanation of it this morning. Mayor Durkin is asking her council for a proclamation of a state of emergency, and that allows her to make decisions outside of the regular process. So it is my understanding that our King County council members heard about this about the same time we did. But I have been in conversation with them, and they are supportive.
Are you looking at doing a similar state of emergency in Kent?
So it's something that I actually talked about with our chief administrative officer on the way out the door, and he is doing some research to determine what that looks like and what the benefits would be. I think one of them is access to federal dollars, and that would help us with things like mitigation. I'm concerned about the added expense on all fronts. Police department, fire department, and then the impact to our businesses. So one of the things that I have talked to with the businesses in that area, talked about with some of the businesses in the area, is I need you to keep track. I need you to keep track of the impacts of this so that we can make the case to the county for mitigation, because we know they've got a pretty good pot of money for it.
The follow-up to that is, if you did declare a state of emergency, would that allow some pushback to the King County?
Not as far as the citing of essential public facilities, no. It's my understanding, and I have not been briefed on all of the ins and outs and pros and cons of this, but what it does more is allows us access to funding. Yes, sir.
Seeing for real, what happens after the 14 days and somebody doesn't have a place to live and they're out of quarantine? What's that going to do to safety and
So the question was outside of the 14 days, so somebody's been through quarantine, they don't have a place to live. That is also one of the questions that we asked them on Tuesday and on Wednesday. The real concern is that we know that this is in a high likelihood, this will be a quarantine facility for unsheltered people. And my concern is that they are connected with services and put back in the community that is essentially their home, and not just the door be opened and said, here, now you're on your own in the city of Kent.
I have a question. This sounds like the no plan to me, in terms of what you're dealing with. The head tax, the no plan.
There's a theme.
But I do have a question. Is the health department involved with this?
Yes, so the Department of Health at the county, so public health at the county level, Department of Health at the state level, they are in charge of this. Yeah. Promise you. Promise you. This is their world, right? All of this falls under their umbrella. So that's why when I say that the city of Kent is following the lead of public health, it's because it's not our jurisdiction. We're not the experts on this, and we don't have the skill set to deal with it. So we do follow the lead of public health.
To add to her question, at what point would FEMA get involved?
Say that one more time.
To add to her question, at what point would FEMA get involved?
That's a good question. I don't know. I know that there's been conversations with the federal government and the state of Washington. That's that tie, and then the state of Washington and King County. But I'm not sure where.
What was the question?
What was her question?
I'm sorry. He just told me to repeat the questions. When does FEMA get involved? Yes.
In 4 hours, I'm going to be addressing the homeless community at the Kent Lutheran Church. I have no more answers to say to them as this comes up. And it's very frustrating. So I'm just asking for those that deal with the homeless and understand what is going on in our community. It's very frustrating for me and those that are serving that population. We want the answers too, but right now it sounds like all we do is just pray and not have fear ruling whatever we want.
Yeah, so I will tell you, we are trying to dig down into what the plan is for our most vulnerable populations, and as soon as we hear something, then we will pass that information along. But at this point, we think that's what this plan is the quarantine facilities. There's one here, and there's a modular one in White Center.
I know that the Vice President is coming to visit government agency. Since Kent will be, having this facility, which is quite important, especially if it's a test, would you be invited to conversations at the same time with them?
I was not invited. That's the other theme. Yeah, I do want to provide, before we take any more questions, so if you have concerns about this or questions about the quarantine facility being located in Kent, we do want you to reach out to the King County Executive's office. I am giving this phone number out by permission. They said this is where they prefer people to call. Yesterday during the press conference, I directed them to public health, and that caused quite a stir. I let them know that the minute that this news broke, my residents were going to be all over it. So a little bit overwhelmed yesterday. The direct line to the county executive's office is 206-263-9600. And they have assured me that they will be able to answer your questions. And they will also be able to hear your concerns. And my ask is that the concern, really our biggest concern is around the lack of transparency in this process. I get it's an emergency, but it takes about 5 minutes to make a phone call.
You know that you're planning to have more self-quarantine locations besides your White Center?
The question is, are there more quarantine sites planned? So what we've heard is that for sure the one in White Center, the modular facility, for sure the one in Kent, and then they announced yesterday one in Inner Bay, and someplace else in North Seattle.
Is it only for King County or?
Yes. So I say yes, but that's my understanding, but all governments have interlocal agreements, so I don't know what something happens in Linwood, do they send somebody to North Seattle? I'm not sure about that. Chief, did you have something?
Did you want to talk about why they didn't choose places like where the problem is at Kirkland versus Kent?
So that was one of our very first, so the question is, do you want to talk about why they didn't choose Kirkland and why they chose Kent? So that was obviously one of our very first questions, and we were simply told it's because property was available. Well, I believe property is available in every city in the county. Our big concern, honestly, is, and you heard, if you watched the press conference yesterday, Council Member Boyce talked about this. This is an equity issue, right? Are we taking a situation that's occurring in the more affluent part of the county and sending it down to the less affluent, more diverse part of the county? And I don't say that lightly. I'm not here to point fingers. The problem is there's a pattern of this. They chose Kent and White Center. I don't know how you get around that. I was told that was unfortunate optics and not purposeful, but again, perception or reality, I don't know.
Is that Hacking Fire Training Center that they initially had for quarantine?
Yeah, so we asked that question yesterday and we got an interesting answer back. They said that facility could only hold 2 people, which didn't make a lot of sense to any of us in the room. Chief?
I talked to WSP Command today. There was also, they realized that it snowed up there. That was good.
Oh, there was some concern about it possibly snowing is what WSP Command told the chief. It's March, I suppose it could snow. You guys, I apologize for my glibness. I was still emailing folks last night at 1 a.m. It has been a long couple of days. I haven't even begun to touch the Facebook comments or respond to most of the emails. We're working on it.
Or the State of the City.
Or the State of the City, which is the biggest speech of the year that happens to be happening tonight at 6 o'clock at Blue Origin. In case you're interested, we'd love to have you.
How's the press handled? Are they really negative on you and taking us to
It's been surprisingly positive. I think that they are hearing the message that this is not about Kent saying we don't want to help, right? And that is every time I open my mouth, my talking point is this is not Kent saying we don't want to help. This is Kent saying you didn't involve us, you didn't consult us, you didn't bring us to the party, and we do want to help, but we want to do it in a way that makes sense for our community. For the most part, that message has gone out loud and clear. On a side note, an interesting thing, oh my goodness, I've not done so many interviews ever in my entire lifetime. We have talked to the New York Times, the LA Times, the AP National News. I just learned I've got an interview with Esquire magazine this afternoon. Wow. I don't know what that's about. So this is a national story. This is a national story. So the virus itself is absolutely captured the nation. But my hope is that it's also a story for people about how local governments cooperate and work together, right? I said this repeatedly. I sent it in an email to the executive last night. That was my 1 a.m. email before I'm like, I gotta put my phone down. We want to be engaged. We make better decisions when we talk to each other and do it collectively, right? That needs to be the theme. It needs to be, we heard something from the executive, well, we needed to protect the real estate transaction and respectful for the property owner. That property owner walked away with $4 million and we got a quarantine facility. I feel like there's a problem with who we're respecting. Other questions? You guys are gonna let me off really easy.
I just want to say thank you, by the way.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
You guys are gonna make me cry. With every bit of sincerity I have, I love this place. I live and I breathe Kent because it is my home, and we are an amazing community that cares about each other. And when I feel like that's being threatened, I will stand up and I will defend every single one of us to the very end.
Thank you. want to talk about the Civics 101 class that you've been hosting.
I would love to. That is such a happier topic.
I'm here for you.
So Carmen is attending that class. One of the things we talked about last year in our State of the City address, and one of the commitments I made to the community, was transparency and openness and education. So we started what we call Kent 101. It's a civics academy for residents that are interested, or people that work here in Kent, that are interested in how our government works. And this was our trial run, so it's kind of our guinea pig class. But I think it's been going really well. We're going to spend some time with them at the end to get their input. But it's really, we've got departments coming in front of this group. We've got about 30 students that are coming to Kent City Hall every Wednesday evening, right? Thank you. And learning about government. What do we do? What services we provide? How we do it? What are the challenges? All of those things, and we talk about it department by department. So we started out with the mayor's office and the city council, the city clerk, worked through the police department, our court, legal. Last night was a presentation on public works and all of the things that they do. So the things that you think about, streets and sewer and water, but storm management and wetlands and levees, all of those things, traffic control. And we're working through the departments. We've got, I think, 1 week left to go. A couple of field trips planned and a graduation. But I want to say it is the most engaged group every week. Really good questions. It's a long haul. It's 6 to 8:30. We've been running till 9 o'clock most nights. But been fantastic questions, and we are going to do this again in the fall. We're hoping to do 2 classes a year. We had 65 applicants for what started out as 25 spots. We bumped it up to 30, and we sort of hit 32 at one point. But want to make sure that it stays manageable and that people feel like they can have a conversation and ask questions. So I am pleased to say it's up and running and really looking forward to doing it again.
And where is the information posted if we're interested in the next class?
It'll be on the website and our Facebook page and Twitter feed.
Good.
So yeah, and again, trying really hard to be open and transparent. So if you're not following our Facebook page, nothing else, it's a lot of information and a lot of things to laugh at. We've changed our approach. We want to make sure that there's humor mixed in with all of this serious stuff. And what we have also found is that the humor has allowed us to attract new people to pay attention, and then so more people are getting the message on the important side. Other questions? All right, that was easy. No, thank you very much. And just like I said, thank you all. Please stay engaged as we work through this virus thing. We will continue to push out the information from public health. They are the experts. Also committed to working with the Kent School District to help them share their message as they make decisions going forward. Uncharted territory. We've never been there before, so we are doing our very best to make sure that you all have the information you need and that we are not creating panic when it's not necessary, but when things are very serious, you will also hear that from us. So that's our commitment.